Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Matter as well as the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Dark Matter, you can skip to what I have to say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Dark Matter. A very, very good episode with some nice twists and turns to it. Obviously, the entire story is revolving around Six's whole situation of like being kind of trapped in like a simulation. And I love how, because like to me, I'm thinking this entire time, like, okay, this Agent Zero program, they done something to Six. It's like, you see all these bodies around. It's like, obviously he's turned into like a monster or something. And now, okay, and then you see like the flashes of the people, the hazmat suit. It's like, okay, they retrieved him and stuff. It's like, oh man, now he's back on the Raza. Okay, the Raza got to him, but they didn't realize like his head has been messed with. So he's kind of like a implant agent or whatever, and gathering intel, or it's probably even going to turn on. I was like, immediately my brain was like, oh man, it sucks because this means the crew might have to end up killing Six. But then things start taking a turn. I'm like, okay, it's like maybe that's not the case. But then little things here and there start not matching it up. Everyone keeps asking us like, yo, tell me about this whole situation about, the coordinates to all these like independent colony leaders. Like, yeah, where are they located? Like, they keep asking over and over again. I was like, wait, is this some kind of like simulation type of thing? Turns out it is. Because it started getting to the point, like, because like Six was like, oh, I can't read this label. I was like, immediately my brain goes, oh, that's like a whole dream thing, because that's supposed to be a thing how you recognize you're in a dream, is the fact is that you can't read anything. But then it's like, no, he rationalizes it later on. The reason why he couldn't read was because it's like certain details, obviously, about the people and the rods and stuff. Those are finer details that obviously he would know, but he'd be able to focus on. But something like reading a machine talking about his body health and stuff like that, as well as the medication, of course he wouldn't really know that, because that's little details he wouldn't catch up on and stuff like that. So it's just those little details plus certain aspects about people just didn't fit right. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, because that's what this whole Agent Zero program is about using him as a means of finding out where the location of the other independent colony leaders and people gathering up so they can be all wiped out at once by Ferris Corp. So I just thought that was so fascinating, and it was done so well, to the point like even Six is kind of think he's a little crazy. At one point, like obviously because this whole process is messing with his head, because at the beginning they're like, oh yeah, you got this neurotoxin and it's messing with your head, it's unlocking some of your dormant memories, which Five ended up bringing us something interesting. Obviously, this is when you think it might still be real. The fact is like, oh yeah, it's actually a bad thing he's getting his memories back, because it's the same. It's like, well, we already saw what happened when Four got his memory back. It's like, oh, not the same. It's like, well, how do you know for sure? Four wasn't who Four is now. Four wasn't the Rio that he is now until he got his memories back. So who's to say the same thing is not going to happen to you? So obviously she's a little concerned. I also appreciate the second time through when he thought he got free, but they worked on the finer details. Like they ended up, like Three kind of punched him immediately. Cause what also got his attention too, and I immediately noticed it too, and he ended up pointing it out, was like he knocked down the android. I was like, that shouldn't have been possible. You like punched her and it took her down. It's like, she's an android. That should have actually broken your fist or something. But then he was like, but when the time came, he was like, okay, I need you guys to, he's like, all right, I need you to hit me. He's like, what? Yeah, I didn't need you. And bam, Three hits him. He's like, you didn't even let me finish. Like, hey, bro, tell me to hit you, and I hit you. So I was like, man, I was like, okay, I guess he's safe. And then it turns out, oh no, he's not. They just fixed the simulation and made it seem even more real. But he ended up figuring out it was a fake simulation again, because of the whole memory thing. Because he was remembering his past memories. And to me, like, I started thinking like, oh, what if this whole thing was part of a trap? Like, what if, I mean, they immediately brought it up eventually. Like, the fact is the whole process was dislodging his memories, like, that were kind of, like, his memories are there, they're just hidden away by his subconscious. So this whole process was doing that, and that was kind of why the whole system was failing a little bit, because it couldn't compensate for the memories that were kind of fluxing it. So he was bouncing back and forth, so it was like messing with the system. So that's why it was falling apart and get a little glitchy in certain areas. So, but I mean, that was a big thing too, like finding out more about Six's life. That, as Val, he had a wife and a son, but basically his need to get revenge on the Colonel. But he didn't. He kind of cast his family aside because he was so caught up in vengeance and stuff like that. And so it's kind of sad, and it's a situation of like he can kind of interact with his memories and stuff like that, but it's like that's them at the end of the day, their memories. He can't change that. I mean, luckily for him, he was able to get free. I love the whole like him getting shot thing. I was like, the moment that happened and they were staring, I was like, he put the helmet on one of them, didn't he? And it's like, yep, it turns out he did. I was like, but then how do you explain the other dude? I was like, oh, the other dude's over there, he got the shit beat out of him. I also appreciate that the Raza was aware of this whole situation, at least that, like, Six was alive and well, because of the fact is that, Anders kind of contacted him. So it's good to see that that window hasn't completely closed to them. We still, because they haven't had to deal with too much, like, GA interference, like, because, I don't remember his character, but was it Kirkin? It's, the actor who played Dyson in Lost Girls. His character last season, obviously, like, he was kind of the biggest, like, threat towards the Raza, but it seems like they haven't really had to worry about the Galactic Authority too much. I don't know, maybe Anders is kind of, like, shielding him a little bit from that front, but nevertheless, it's like they haven't really had to deal with the Galactic Authority for a while, but they'll probably cross paths with them soon enough, because the Raza just can't stay out of trouble, especially with things kind of heading the direction that they are. Because at this point, it's like, we got to pick a side in this whole situation. We can't be on the sidelines anymore, because now Ferris Corp did what they did. They killed everyone on that colony. And it's like they won't stop until, you know, because you can't let Ferris Corp keep doing what they're doing. Six is like, initially, I was all fine with the colonies wiping each other out, but it's like, we have to fight. We have to pick a side. They decided to pick MK. It's like they have, like... Mike isn't the one that they have the most positive experiences with Mike, you know, specifically with Truffaut, but, you know, I mean, they still want they have their own slice of the pie with this whole situation. That's why they're keeping neutral and stuff like that. But even Six is like, eventually they'll have to pick a side, because Ferris Corp will come after them eventually. Even if you're still competition, you're still a big time corporation that could be a threat. Even if you're slightly okay now, Ferris Corp might look at you as a threat in the future because of the potential position and power that you already have. So that's one thing. So that's definitely going to be interesting, convincing them to kind of take part in the war, because Truffaut has been very blunt about, like, no, I'm going to choose my sides carefully. Especially, like, their last interaction being the whole, like, alternate reality to Raza. It's just like, oh yeah, those impersonators and stuff like that, at least from Truffaut's perspective, because it's like, we can't really explain the whole, like, oh, that's not really us situation, that's us from a different realm. That's a whole thing, which you're gonna have to go deal with too, because they're still out there being a danger. Because last time we saw them, she was working with Truffaut's, I mean, Captain Neiman from Commander Neiman from Ferris Corp. So at least that last interaction we saw was between him and Portia. And kind of an interesting thing too, it's just kind of a slight note I feel like I should comment on from, like, last week's episode about the different realities. I mean, it seems like they're trying to use their knowledge from the other reality to help them in this one. I mean, and it's kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, I kind of constantly brought up the fact is, I mean, obviously, and it plays a part in this episode, like the whole, like, getting your memories back and everything. Because I'm curious, like, because this episode also brought up whether or not the group will ever decide. It brings up the whole conversation of, will they ever take their memories back? I don't know if Five's really interested in his memories. I mean, he checked up on his wife. She's already moved on. It's like, I guess he has a wife and son, but, you know, he probably looks at it like, they're better off not knowing my whole situation, because if I go to them, I'm going to get them dragged into everything I'm involved in. You know, I want to try and do the right thing. And I guess in his eyes too, it's like, this is the right thing. They're happy. They've moved on. Let them, at the very least, he didn't want to drive himself crazy wondering what could be, what happened, where they are now. So seeing that they're good, taken care of and happy, that's enough for him. Still might be something coming about that in the future, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. So I'm curious, will he want to get his memories back or not? Like I said, there's always a danger of becoming 4 again. But a big element in this is, like, 3 brings up the question that he brought up last season. Like, 4 kind of avoided me. Obviously, like, there's something there. Like, it's just he avoided me because he knew that I'd ask questions about me, and the fact is that he'd kind of unintentionally tell me the truth. So something is so bad he doesn't want to tell me because he feels like I'd be happier. He's actually looking out for me. I mean, if it was just Rio, then maybe Rio would have outright told him, but because there's a little bit of 4 in there, he doesn't want to tell 3, you know. He's not, you know, kind of like the heartless Rio that he kind of became. So maybe that kind of plays a role in all of it. But it definitely seems like Sarah knows. She tries to pretend like there's nothing to it, but like the moment her back was turned, a frown kind of came on her face. It's like whatever it is, Sarah definitely knows. But that's the question too. Like the only way to be able to find out is if 3 got his memories back, because 5's the memories are sealed within 5 because she can't access them anymore, because the whole point was like lock them away so they would no longer put her life in danger. So if 3 wanted to find out, he couldn't go to 5. He'd have to get his memories back himself, especially if Sarah's not going to tell him the truth. So that kind of brings that question back up there. The main one that's never seemed at all interested in her past has been 2. But I mean, like I said, like they're bringing that conversation back up. So it might be a situation where they have no choice but to get their memories back. It might be part of what kind of like future 5 was talking about, like, bad things happening to them. Eventually, the rest of the Raza might get their memories back because they have no choice. It's like they need to prepare. Like there's stuff from Portia's past that she might have to know that she can only know as Portia and not as 2. So I don't know. There was also that thing at the very end, too, that I thought was crazy, like the whole android situation. And the moment that happened, I was like, because she went specifically to check everyone's rooms, I was like, okay, now immediately this is where my brain is. It's weird and everything. I mean, I guess it still applies. I thought what happened was that Sarah possessed an android, and then she was going to go and try, like, basically have sex with 3. Basically being like, okay, this way we can be intimate. Because she had the whole conversation with 2. Because like 2 is like, yeah, I know it's a little awkward, but like you're a part of the ship, you're a part of this ship too, and I haven't taken the time to really kind of like just say hi to you and everything. Like you built this world for yourself, but for her, it's like, nah, man, this world is great and everything, but it's lonely. Like obviously you get a little human interaction here and there between her and 3, but that's about it. And it's something that 3 kind of brought up in the episode. He's like, it's nice being with Sarah, but it's hard being all of someone's world, because 3 is the only thing that Sarah has. And then combined with the fact is like, bringing up that conversation of like, there's no human interaction and stuff like that. Part of me was thinking like, because of the whole nanite situation with 2, that she was going to try and possess 2 or something like that. But maybe that's a little more complicated because of just 2 being a complicated thing of like, I'm not trying to refer to her as a thing, but she's not, human. She's a synthetic being and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I think that'd be kind of the proper term. 2 is 2, like, simply put. So maybe it'd be a little harder, but maybe because the android's connected to the system and everything, which, as more and more time is going on, Sarah's getting connected. Anyway, get back to my point. I thought that's what that whole situation was about. The moment she pulled that gun, I was like, my point, it's something, if you didn't know, I brought up previously. I figured this is going to be where things are heading. That eventually, because it's like, what did Sarah say? I want to make this place not just a home for me, but a home for you. Meaning she's going to want 3 to stay at some point. And it's like, so how do you do that? Pointing a gun at him, she was probably test running it to see what she'd be able to do. Like either the android systems were kind of able to fight it back to a certain extent, or she was just test running it to see like, whether she has complete control or not. Like she still doesn't have a good layout of the place because she didn't know, she had to check every room before she ended up coming upon 3. So still working out the kinks of it. So probably trial running it from time to time, but it's like she's going to try and kill 3 so that basically 5 can do what she did for Sarah and put 3 in there. So definitely it's taking that turn a lot sooner than I thought it was going to, but I figured it was going to happen with that whole situation, just considering it's like, you're this way, and she probably senses 3's reservations about the whole situation of coming in and visiting her, and she's just a program and everything, and just wanting to make the whole thing permanent. So I don't know. I'm definitely very interested to see what will be kind of the turnout of this whole situation. Like, will it ultimately end with him? Like, it might be a situation where 3 goes like, yeah, the fact of the matter is I can't let you keep on being this way. Because for one, you're putting me as well as the rest of the crew in danger. You want to actually kill me and everything. So it's like they might have to shut down the programming, but that's going to turn into a whole situation of like turning the entire Raza against them. Because, as we can see, she's slowly getting more and more control to the point she can even control the android. Who's to say there might not be a point where she might even be able to control 2? Like I said, like 2's got a whole system to herself too, especially because 2's nanites allow her to kind of connect to the Raza. That was a whole thing. So we'll see whether anything comes about that or not. But like I said, a very good episode, and just everything that went down. And I'm so very interested to find out more about like what's going on between Neiman and Portia, and like what other reality Razas got up their sleeves. And what's going to come about this whole like Sarah situation. Because undoubtedly that's what that is. There's nothing else it could have been. So, and also the fact is that we do have Six back on board full time. So yay. I do hope maybe at some point we'll also cross paths with Adrian and Solara again to kind of get them to join things. But at least for now, the Raza crew is somewhat back to whole again. There's still the whole Rio situation we dealt with. But I'm very curious to see like where they plan on going from here with their whole plans of like choosing Mike as allies in this war. Because obviously, as we know, there's a lot more waiting for the Raza crew in the future. Some of it, probably a lot of it, probably not even just some, a lot of it not so nice. Really quick, I'll add this in at the end too. Since I brought up the whole conversation of 3 and like, a Sarah possessing the android and the whole like thing happening. Like, I mean, I'm not the only one that's noticed that most times when the android is kind of like in her upgraded form is kind of acting more human and everything, she tends to kind of be a little flirtatious when it comes towards 3. So like, there's always, because I think out of anyone, they probably have the biggest relationship, obviously, like compared to like 2 and the android, like, but between I don't know, like obviously there's always a big relationship with all the characters, but it feels like, I don't know, there's just something there between the android and 3, and I think it'd be funny and interesting. That's why the whole like sex thing would have just been, I mean, for one, it's just awkward, and I just would have loved if that's how that would have went about, because you probably have 3 waking up like, whoa, what the hell is going on? Don't worry, Mark, it's me. Sarah? That whole conversation would have been interesting. I mean, who's to say it can't be implemented like that in the future, but I'm definitely thinking of like the whole, let's kill Marcus is going to be the whole like approach going forward, especially the way the episode ended and everything. So, and I'm sure obviously the android is going to have no memories of it. So that's, like I said, the whole thing's a trial run and everything. So, like I said, we'll have to wait till see like, where like everything I brought up heads in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, a very, very good episode of Wynonna Earp, where we have, mainly Wynonna dealing with the whole like pregnancy thing. The only person at the time who knew was Waverly. I mean, obviously by the time we got to the end of the episode, everybody knows. Apparently at some point Jeremy figured it out. It was just like, oh, was that supposed to be a secret? But obviously Waverly figured it out. Nicole kind of walked in on the whole situation later on and seeing Wynonna's stomach and everything. So it's just kind of interesting the way Wynonna kind of looks at it. I mean, because for her, it's like, I got so much to already deal with, being the heir and everything that comes along with it. I've got like so much shit to go on in my life. I don't have time to worry about being a mom and everything. I mean, because for her, it's really sad, because for Wynonna, it's like, this was all thrown on her. She didn't want to be the heir. The heir was supposed to be Willa. This is supposed to be Willa's responsibility, but it all, came upon her, and now she's pregnant too. She's like, who am I supposed to be, like, being a mom and everything, with the whole like, because now she's stuck pregnant. I would have expected like when it was all said and done, she would have gone back to just being regular size, but it's like, nope, I mean, obviously she wasn't going to stop being pregnant, but it's like being as far along that she is, she literally looks like she's ready to pop now. It's like, I was so with the whole like, time and everything, which was kind of an interesting aspect to it. I was like, everyone's falling asleep. I was like, like what I was thinking was, it's like what we're gonna see. It's like when it's all said and done, it's like they're gonna like dolls and Wynonna are gonna wake up. At first, I was like, this is some kind of dream thing, mass dream hallucination. I guess it kind of works in that same vein, the way Hypnos, the demon behind it all, kind of brings it up later on. Well, at the end of the episode. So I was thinking they're gonna walk out. It's like, we're in the future. So much time has passed. Only what's in the cafe stayed for whatever reason. It's like, no, the entirety of Purgatory has been asleep for a couple weeks. Basically, it's the and I like the name that they're just giving them, the widows. It makes sense the way they're in the black cloaks and everything, the black veils and everything. It's like widows, of course. So we're just going to refer to them as that. The widows had their time to look for. Apparently, there are more seals, not just 2, but apparently there's 3, because they ended up finding a second one during that whole like everyone being sleep thing. I just thought that was kind of an interesting take on the story. But the fact is that when it was all said and done, everyone else was like, when it was all said and done, everyone was able to go back to being like, hey, we've only been asleep for like, maybe a few hours, like not the weeks have passed like they have for most people. It just felt more like a dream. So, I mean, I have a hard time whether it's just like he messed with people's heads to make them think only that amount of time. Well, no, because he brought it up. He told Wynonna to check her phone, and she checked her phone and it was back to the date so basically, he can manipulate time. So I guess he can push it. He put them to sleep, but I guess time is also kind of like, I don't know, like it's complicated. I'm about to say it's just, human concept. I mean, but even then, it's like to give it like an actual number, I guess. But I mean, as you can tell, like, you know, in nature, time exists and everything. So obviously, that's like total BS of what I just said. So that's why I was gone on pulling back. Nevertheless, but she stopped being pregnant. In the fact of the matter, she's ready to pop. I did it again. So that's definitely very interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I was so sure she's going to like go back to having a small belly. I was so sure that she was going to keep it hidden the entire time. I thought it was going to stay hidden a lot longer, but it's like, no, dolls, no, and no, so does dogs. Because for them, it's like, now for dolls, it's like, there was for him, is always the worry of like the professionalism. It's like, I mean, they ended up finding out Black Badge is no more. Because they end up meeting Moody. Once again, it's weird seeing, you know, like I said, that's the actor who plays Arthur. I think the actor's name is Kevin Hanchard. Something like that. Obviously Arthur from, Orphan Black is what I know him best from. So it's just so interesting to see him like that. Basically, he points out, yeah, Black Badge is no longer a thing because the powers that be decided, yeah, this whole Ghost Triangle situation and you guys is too much of a headache, especially after the whole situation with quote unquote Doc letting the widows out and everything. It's like, yeah, this is your mess to clean up with. You're no longer getting our support. And he's like, and Dawes is like, a government agency just can't up and disappear like this. He's like, Black Badge isn't a government agency. It never was. So this is some like top level stuff. Maybe it's actually connected to Juan Carlo, which then the widows themselves actually reference like, oh, maybe we should go see Juan Carlo, but the one that was possessing the one that looks like Mercedes is like, no, we can't. We're not strong enough. So it's like, so you would. Like I said, it seems like Juan Carlo and whoever he and they represent, they are a neutral party. So maybe that's what, you know, because Black Badge is all about like, oh, let's see what happens. So maybe they fall in that same category too. Like, it seems like there's some ancient organization. They're not necessarily tied to just being like a government agency. They seem like they're one, but they aren't. So, I mean, maybe we'll get more answers to that. I mean, for now, Black Badge is gone and it's only like our heroes handling the situation. But for Dawes, it's like, oh, now that professionalism, me being your boss thing is no longer an option, it's like, oh, maybe we can start talking about that area, which Doc is like, kind of like, no, because obviously there's a whole jealousy thing, because there was the whole him and Wynonna thing first, but then there was the whole Dawes and Wynonna thing, but got complicated because of the whole, like, I guess because now it's out in the open of what he is. I mean, we still don't know what he is, because she's like lizard or cool dragon thing, whatever the case may be, and now there's no longer that position of like, oh, boss and co-worker type of thing. So kind of cut the bounds of professionalism, which you even have him on multiple occasions trying to talk to Wynonna about it, but Wynonna's not trying to talk to him because it's like, because she wants to kind of tell him the truth, but at the same time she doesn't want to, just because it's like she just wants to keep this. I guess it's one of those deniability type of situations, like the longer you deny something, the less real it is. So I guess she felt like as long as I kept, you know, denying it, it didn't become more real until like more and more people found out. So it's just, you know, because she even brought up something too. She was like, I've been on so many different birth controls since I was 13. It's like, you know, it was never a possibility. So either it's like an accident or just something went wrong. I mean, granted, neither one of them is like normal, because obviously dad's got to be Doc. So it's like neither one of them is normal. He's a dude that's been kept alive by magic. She's an Earp. So it's like, I guess two supernatural worlds collide and voila, you have a baby. I guess that's how that works. Not unless it was just kind of like, you know, once again, like the nature just kind of screwing her over, but being like, oh yeah, your birth control doesn't work. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll kind of get into it. Maybe like it might not be enough of a thing for them to really dive into. It might just be like it happened. It's part of the story, and voila. Like it might not be so intricate that they need to. They might just be like, no, she's pregnant. That's all there is to it. It's why you're trying to look deeper than that, you know. So. But now that definitely complicates things for all three of them, because like now Dawes Dawes and, you know, Wynonna, her relationship. I mean, granted, you know, now he's kind of treating her like, no, we're in that boss position again. He's kind of barking orders at her, telling her to kill Hypnos, because it's like, well, you need to kill him. I also appreciate the fact that they kind of refer to him as Sandman. He is like of a Sandman variety, which kind of makes sense, because when Wynonna woke up, she kind of dusted off her jacket, and I was like, didn't click in my head at that time. It's like, well, at that time, I guess, you know, I mean, more so than anything, it represented dust, because the fact that they were sitting there, now I'm sitting here thinking about it. But maybe you could also look at it, think like, oh, it was her wiping off. It was definitely dust, not regular dirt dust, not because everything in the diner was dirty and everything too. So basically making exactly what I just said pointless, but it's staying in. Just conversational piece, you know. But it's like Hypnos had to die because it's like he's too much of a powerful demon for him just to be left alone. It seems like he's been sedated this entire time. It's like he was supposed to not be woken up before now. So it's like, what was he supposed to be woken up for? I guess like when the time truly came or whatever. I mean, because he was never really on the widow's side. He was like, yeah, you idiots do whatever you want to, just leave me alone. But they kidnapped his daughter, which is kind of interesting. You're a demon and you have a daughter. So it's like, is she like a regular? Well, I guess she's not human then. I mean, it never came up that she's a demon, but the fact is, if her dad's a demon, maybe she's one, not unless her mom's human, and don't know if demons can procreate like that, but, maybe they can, maybe, I don't know, but, she left, but, like, Wynonna was like, well, she's not our issue right now, so kind of let her do whatever she wants to, so they got the main things they got to deal with, so it's like, Poppy's no longer an issue, which not unless she comes back for revenge because of the fact that you kill her dad, or maybe she just, maybe it might be a situation where she's actually thankful because she's like, hey, I'm no longer kind of bound by my father anymore, I have to take care of him, keep him sedated and all that stuff, like, I can live my life now, which is kind of the wait and see on that front, but, yeah, things are complicated relationship-wise with that little love triangle situation, especially because Doc and, Waverly caught Doc and Rosita in a very compromising position. I mean, Rosita stayed asleep the entire time, but Doc got woken up. It's also kind of interesting seeing the widows kind of use a little bit more of their powers, like apparently they kind of have that freeze breath and whatever, so that was kind of interesting. We still don't know what the widows actually are, like, monster-wise. They haven't really been discussed, so. But, like I said, it's going to be interesting because Dawes kind of has to go back to being a boss again. Like, it seems like he wants things to happen between him and Wynonna. He even kissed her, but it's like, yeah, because you're just awesome. I mean, you're like an awesome agent. So you saw him kind of slipping back into that role even just then. But Tella kind of bossing her around. She's like, why are you being like this? I was like, I have to be the boss. Like, I guess it's like nothing. He has to step up and take that responsibility because it's like if he doesn't, who's going to kind of take charge and kind of bark out orders and stuff like that, especially since there's no chain of command anymore for them. It's like it's just their group. So it's also kind of interesting that we did find out that a third seal was underneath Shorty's. Should have figured there was some significance to Shorty's because it just kept being tossed around. Well, Bobo bought it like kind of as a middle finger to Waverly and Wynonna last season, but at the same time, it was like he was also looking for his lead, which obviously we know was Willa and everything, so he maybe figured it was a key to that. Was that before or after he found out that Willa was still... I think no, he bought it beforehand, so... I guess he figured like the signs would be there to kind of help him find Will. I guess that was kind of the whole point. But it was also just a big middle finger to them. But then, Doc bought it back and everything. So it was like, I guess there was always signs that there was some significance to Shorty's. But, I mean, more so now. I mean, we don't know whether the widows actually were able to complete what they wanted to do. It does not seem like it. They kind of got scared off. They were in the middle of casting a spell. Which it wasn't until, like, because the moment, like, because they even brought up Constance's name, and they're like, oh, yeah, because they were trying to find out where they could find the seals and everything, because it's like Bobo kind of kept their... If Bobo knew, he took them the secrets to his grave. It's like, oh, what about Constance? It's like, oh, we don't know where she is. But then later on, Tucker mentioned, like, oh, yeah, the salt fields. I'm like, that's where Constance is. I brought it up because I felt like that was definitely going to be something... Like, she was left alive in the salt fields and stuff like that. It's like, definitely she's going to come back in some shape or form. I mean, she came back in the shape or form of... Tucker apparently cut off her head and threw her at the Gardner estate, like kind of basically almost like declaring war on his sisters, being like, yeah, now it's time for a new game. So it's like, oh, wait, what? Like I said, Tucker just seems like a bit case of fucked up. That's all I can really refer to him as. I don't know where his direction his little story is going. He just seems like a weirdo. Because there was that whole situation with Poppy that he was making her. He's like, yeah, no, brush your hair. That's not how Waverly do it. I dress in this outfit. She's like, I'm not Waverly and whatever. So it's like he's become obsessed with Waverly. Kind of figured that was going to be the case, but it's like for what reason and stuff like that. He wants to be with. I mean, because the whole point was like to get the two sisters, the widows, to help him get ladies. To get a lady. He wanted a girlfriend, essentially. And it's like, I don't know. He's like, oh, I can't. Because obviously Nicole ended up shooting because it's like, yeah, I've been like, which I also appreciate the fact that she bugged his phone and everything, which even Wynonna is like, I'm not going to judge you. I mean, okay, I'm gonna judge you a little. I mean, judge you for being awesome because like being the bad, kind of, because it's like Nicole's kind of, Wynonna kind of looks at her as kind of a stick in the mud. You follow the rules and everything. It's like, oh, you kind of did something very illegal like that. All right, look at you being a badass and everything. She ended up shooting him, but he threw himself out the window because he's like, they'd kill me. I don't understand like where his whole story is. Like, it seemed like he was essential to their part of the plan, but at the same time, it seems like he's more of a hindrance because there's that whole situation where Mercedes went to visit Wynonna at the diner and stuff like that. I mean, ended up talking to her, but she like obviously like some things she's like, oh, you still got that silver spoon up your ass, and then Mercedes actually looked, so obviously certain things kind of go over her head. But the way she was talking to Wynonna, it was almost like, oh, like, hey, like, I don't know whether, I guess it's just her trying to fake being human. Like, certain interactions she has, she's like, oh yeah, my brother, he's such a pain in the ass. And it's like, oh, let me see if he's holding someone hostage now and stuff like that. So it's like, is that Widow able to fake those conversations because of wearing, Mercedes' faces kind of give her the memories and gives her Mercedes' personality and stuff like that, much like Beth and everything? I mean, the question is, too, what about Beth and Mercedes? Last time we saw, they had their faces torn off, but they were still alive. So are they actually still alive, too? I mean, I guess it depends on Tucker. Is he taking care of his sisters? I mean, now that Tucker's kind of known to be kind of involved in all this, does Wynonna actually know that Beth and Mercedes are involved in this? Or do you think at this point it's like, nah, only Tucker is? So will she ever confront the others and be like, oh, Mercedes, I'm sorry, have you seen your brother? It's like, oh, no. And Mercedes, quote unquote Mercedes, the widow. One of the widows is going to have to play dumb or something. I don't know, because I don't think it was actually revealed that was actually them. Their faces were hidden the entire time. So, I don't know. Like I said, I'm very interested to find out more about them. Like, what significance Tucker plays in all of this. I wonder how did Constance get in that condition, too? I guess, like, being part of that salt for so long just dried up her skin. Like, I guess it was because, the salt kind of kept her powers at bay. So I guess without her magic powers, she eventually just dried up and was, became how old she was. And so her head got cut off. So I guess that also means no, like, reappearance of Constance. Also, they refer to her as Sister Constance. So I guess it makes sense that they are witches too. So once again, like, did they finish doing what they did at Shorty's? I don't think they did. Maybe they did, but maybe there's another step beyond the 3 seals and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know. We don't know what really came about from them cracking the first seal. We don't even know what happened when they cracked the second seal. So, and then once again, there's the whole situation with Wynonna and the baby and what this means for the relationship between her and Doc and Dolls. Side note, if you were able to read that note, let me know in the comments down below. I didn't catch the note. I was trying to read it, but I couldn't make out what Doc had written on that note. Maybe I'll probably look it up afterwards, like what did Doc put on that note. But at the time of recording this, I didn't really see it. So, don't know. So I'm sure they'll probably reiterate it in like the next episode or whatever. I mean, we also find out that things are good between Hot and Nicole and Waverly, because it's like, because Waverly was kind of a little like, I don't really know. This is like the first time me being around Nicole since the whole like not being possessed anymore situation. Which, I mean, Nicole's like, well, how do I know for sure which moments were you and which were that thing? But she's like, no, like anytime I was with you was definitely me, because that's the only times I remember, like, because I don't remember much time when that thing took over, but I definitely remember every time I was with you. So, that was the only time. Those are definitely moments of like, I was definitely in control. So, also another kind of element that played into this episode, it's actually, I forgot to almost bring it up earlier too, is why kind of things didn't really work out for Wynonna. I guess it's because of being the Earp and everything, because like the circumstances of everything kind of didn't, because Wynonna didn't play by the rules of this whole situation, because she was able to fight the sleep by herself, because Peacemaker kept waking her up, like it kind of acted like, as she said, like an alarm clock and like a, it shocked her. It would light up. It's like, okay, that's new. So makes you wonder, are we slowly seeing more and more of, I mean, I don't know, like, is there other things that Peacemaker can do besides just putting down demons? Does it have special benefits towards the Earp air or not? I mean, because as we saw in like the season 1, like, it's not even just like, Peacemaker that gives her abilities. Like, she kind of has supernatural, like, athleticism. Like, we saw that back in season 1 when she turned 27 and became the heir. Like, So there's definitely something already there about her. It's just more flair added to her because of a Peacemaker. It makes her even more deadlier. So, and Waverly still hasn't told her about the whole like, oh, I'm not an Earp situation. I don't know why I said it weird like that. An Earp situation. The whole not being an Earp, mainly because it's like Wynonna's got already enough on her plate. So it's like I don't want to add more fuel to the fire. Like adding on the fact that I'm not biologically speaking your sister. So. And I brought it up too, like a story element that still hasn't really been touched on. Their dad has been a story element that obviously was dealt with last season, but it's like, what about their mom? Like their mom kind of up and left them, and that's still something that hasn't come up yet. And I get the feeling that's definitely going to play a role in all of this, some shape or form. If you don't know, I have thrown out the thought that maybe Waverly's actually a gardener. Maybe that's why, in some twisted way, Tucker has some sick twisted connection to her. Maybe subconsciously he knows that or something. I don't know. That's immediately where my brain goes, but maybe that's not the case at all. You know, I mean, maybe. I mean, I feel like the fact that she's in purgatory, I feel like Waverly's family has to have something to do with purgatory. They have to have some connection to the Earps too for her to grow up being an Earp. That couldn't have been an accident. Not unless it's like someone from their mom's side of the family. So maybe it's like, maybe they are siblings, but, you know, she isn't an Earp. You know, maybe their mom had an affair with someone else, so she's someone else's kid, you know. I don't know. I mean, she is the youngest, so it could have been sometime after, like, Wynonna and Willow. I mean, obviously after Willow and Wynonna were born. So maybe it's a situation of her not being happy anymore. I mean, part of the reason why, maybe connected to why she left. I mean, he was kind of abusive, wasn't he? Wasn't that the reason why she left anyway? I thought I vaguely remember that being the case. Them kind of noting that might be the reason why she left, because their dad got drunk a lot. Just because, you know, dealing with the whole, you know, I mean, every Earp handles the curse in a different way. I'm sure some better than others. So, I mean, she's trying her best, but I mean, obviously you can tell it's taking its toll on Wynonna at this point too, just because it's so much all at once. I mean, man, I feel like this season things have really stacked up on her because it's the whole like dealing with Willow's situation. I mean, it's also they kind of out of the whole Black Badge contract situation. I just like it's kind of interesting because it's like, oh, you thought that was good. It's so interesting because I would assume that was going to loom over their head the entire season, that Black Badge was going to hold that against them. I mean, granted, I mean, who's to say that contract still isn't in effect and just Moody just hasn't told them or whatever. So, I mean, I don't know. Well, we would just have to wait and see where any of this goes, and as well as just, you know, any answers to any questions we have about just where everything stands and where everything will go going forward. So, to the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.